Be me, Catherine, 34 years old, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Finally in a position where I can make real change happen. Spent years working my way up through HR, watching qualified candidates get passed over because of systemic bias. Now I have a team of 12 people reporting to me. We've implemented comprehensive unconscious bias training for all hiring managers, established diversity targets for every department, created employee resource groups for underrepresented communities, mandated inclusive language guidelines company-wide. Feeling pretty good about the progress we've made over the past 2 years. Walking into the office Monday morning, coffee in hand, noticed some unusual activity near the C-suite offices. Whatever. Probably just another boring executive meeting. Get to my desk and start reviewing the latest diversity metrics. We're at 47% women in leadership roles, up from 31% when I started. Representation of people of color in management increased by 23%. These numbers prove our initiatives are working exactly as intended. Around 10 a.m., get an email from John, our Chief People Officer. Please come to Conference Room A immediately for an urgent meeting. Bit unusual, but okay. Walk into the conference room to find John, David the CFO, and Robert from legal. All three men look tense, almost hostile. Take a seat across from them at the polished table. Catherine, John begins, his voice unusually flat. We need to discuss the future of your department. Immediately feel defensive energy rising. Is there an issue with our recent initiatives? Because if you look at the data, the issue, David interrupts, his face reddening, is that your department has become a massive drain on our resources with questionable return on investment. Cannot believe what I'm hearing. Questionable? We've literally transformed this company's culture. We've made it a place where everyone can thrive, not just what? Robert leans forward aggressively. Not just the most qualified candidates, because that's what we're paying for, Catherine. Results, performance, profit. The audacity of these men is staggering. You're missing the bigger picture. Diversity isn't just morally right, it's proven to increase innovation and... Where? David slams his hand on the table. Where exactly has it increased our innovation? Our product development has slowed by 15% since you started your quotas. Our engineering efficiency is down across the board. They're clearly not understanding the long-term benefits. Change takes time. You can't expect overnight results when you're dismantling decades of institutional. 2 years, Catherine, John says coldly. We've given you 2 years and a 7-figure budget. Our client satisfaction scores have dropped. Our best engineers are leaving for competitors. Our profit margins are shrinking. These metrics are being taken completely out of context. That has nothing to do with DEI initiatives. The market is volatile right now. Remote work has created challenges. Bullshit, Robert practically spits. Complete bullshit, and you know it. When Tyler left for Google last month, you know what he told me? He said he was tired of watching less qualified candidates get promoted over him because of their demographics. Tyler was exactly the kind of person who needed this wake-up call. Tyler was resistant to change. Some people find it threatening when the playing field gets leveled. David's face is now completely red. Leveled? You call passing over the top performer in our sales division for a promotion leveling the playing field? Sarah had half his numbers, but got the role because you needed to hit your diversity targets. They're completely missing the point about representation. Sales numbers don't tell the whole story. Sarah brings different perspectives, different approaches to client relationships that Tyler never could. She lost 3 major accounts in her first month, John says through gritted teeth. 3 accounts worth collectively $2.3 million in annual revenue. Growing pains are normal in any transition. You're focusing on short-term fluctuations instead of long-term cultural transformation. Robert stands up abruptly. Long-term cultural transformation? Catherine, do you have any idea how angry our shareholders are? Do you understand that we have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize value, not to conduct social experiments? The fact that they see equity as a social experiment is exactly the problem. This isn't experimental. There's decades of research showing that diverse teams outperform homogeneous ones. Then why, David's voice is rising, are we hemorrhaging money? Why are our most productive departments suddenly underperforming? Why are we losing talent to companies that don't have your elaborate diversity apparatus? Correlation isn't causation, obviously. You're scapegoating DEI for broader industry challenges. Look at our employee satisfaction surveys. I have looked at them, John interrupts. Overall satisfaction is down 18%. The comments section is full of complaints about mandatory training, about feeling like they're walking on eggshells, about reverse discrimination. People always resist progress initially. Change is uncomfortable, but discomfort is necessary for growth. Robert sits back down, leaning forward intensely. Catherine, listen to me very carefully. We're not here to debate the philosophical merits of your programs. We're here to inform you that the DEI department is being eliminated, effective immediately. The words hit like a physical blow. You can't be serious. Dead serious, David says. Your entire team is being let go. Your initiatives are being discontinued. Your diversity quotas are being removed from all hiring and promotion decisions. This is absolutely catastrophic. This is the biggest mistake you'll ever make. You're going to set this company back decades. We're going to save it, John says firmly. We're going back to merit-based hiring and promotion. No quotas, no targets, no special considerations based on demographics. They have no idea what they're unleashing. You'll see. Within 6 months, you'll be begging me to come back when your workplace culture implodes. Robert actually laughs, which is infuriating. We'll take that risk. Your severance package is being prepared. You have until end of week to clear out your office. Walk out of that meeting in complete shock. Spend the rest of the week packing up 2 years of progress. Saying goodbye to my team, all of whom are equally devastated. We built something meaningful here, and they're destroying it. Fast forward 3 months. Still looking for a new position, but keeping tabs on my former company through LinkedIn connections. Hearing rumors that they're actually doing better financially. Impossible. Must be short-term fluctuation. Fast forward 6 months. Get a call from Jessica, who still works there in marketing. Catherine, I hate to tell you this, but their Q3 earnings just came out. Profits are up 34% from last year. Absolutely cannot be related to eliminating DEI. That's just coincidental timing with market recovery. I don't know, Jessica sounds uncertain. They've hired a lot of new engineers, and the ones they hired are really productive. They're not doing any diversity screening anymore, just technical skills. Technical skills without considering representation means they're just perpetuating the same old boys club. Fast forward 9 months, company announces record profits. Their stock price has increased 45%. They've expanded into 2 new markets. This is absolutely maddening. Decide I need to reach out directly. Send an email to John requesting a meeting. I'd like to discuss the possibility of returning to help manage your growth sustainably. Surprisingly, he agrees to meet. Walk into the same conference room where my department was eliminated. John is there with David again, both looking considerably more relaxed than before. Catherine, John says with what might actually be a slight smile, good to see you. How's the job search going? Trying to stay professional despite everything. It's going well. But I wanted to discuss your recent success and how DEI could help you maintain it responsibly. David immediately tenses up again. Here we go again. Catherine, our success is directly because we eliminated your programs, not despite it. They're giving themselves way too much credit. Correlation isn't causation. The market improved. Remote work stabilized. Our engineering productivity is up 28%. John interrupts. We're completing projects ahead of schedule with higher quality code. Our customer satisfaction scores are at an all-time high. They're cherry-picking metrics. But what about representation? What about creating opportunities for underrepresented groups? We hired based on qualifications, David says firmly. Guess what happened? We got the most qualified people. The naivety is staggering, and I bet most of them look exactly like the people who were already here. Some do, some don't. John shrugs. We don't track demographics anymore. We track performance. This is exactly the blindness that perpetuates systemic inequality. You're ignoring the barriers that prevent qualified, diverse candidates from even applying. David leans back in his chair. You know what barrier we removed? The barrier that prevented us from hiring the best person for the job. When we stopped worrying about demographics and started focusing solely on ability, everything improved. They're completely missing the structural issues. You think merit exists in a vacuum, but it doesn't. Unconscious bias, networking advantages, educational access. Catherine, John's voice gets harder. Do you want to know what really happened after we eliminated DEI? Brace myself for whatever revisionist narrative they've constructed. Tyler, who you remember left for Google, he heard about our changes and came back. He's now leading our most profitable product line. The 3 engineers who quit during your tenure, they all returned. Our retention rate is the highest it's ever been. People always flock back to comfort zones that don't challenge them. Of course they came back. You created an environment where they never have to examine their privilege or consider other perspectives. David actually laughs again. Or we created an environment where they can focus on doing excellent work without worrying about walking on eggshells. Sarah, John continues, the woman you insisted we promote to sales director, she asked to be moved back to an individual contributor role. Turns out she's much happier and more successful when she's not in a position she wasn't ready for. They completely undermined her confidence instead of providing proper support. Did you provide adequate mentorship, leadership training, or did you just throw her into the role and expect? We provided the same training we give everyone, David interrupts. But we can't manufacture capability, Catherine. Some people excel in leadership roles, others don't. It has nothing to do with demographics. The willful ignorance is breathtaking. Everything has to do with demographics when we live in a society built on systemic advantages for certain groups. John checks his watch impatiently. Catherine, what exactly are you proposing here? Time to make the case for why they need this perspective. Your short-term gains won't last. Eventually, your lack of diverse perspectives will create blind spots. You'll miss opportunities, alienate markets, face PR disasters. You need someone who understands these dynamics. David and John exchange a look. Our customer base has actually become more diverse since we started focusing on product excellence instead of internal demographics, David says. Turns out good products appeal to everyone, regardless of who builds them. They're conflating product quality with inclusive culture. But what about employee satisfaction among underrepresented groups? What about your reputation as an employer? Our Glassdoor rating is higher than ever, John says. People want to work somewhere they can succeed based on their contributions, not their identity. Glassdoor reviews can be manipulated and don't reflect deeper cultural issues. Surface-level satisfaction metrics don't capture experiences of marginalization or microaggressions. David stands up abruptly, clearly agitated. Microaggressions. Catherine, do you know what a macroaggression is? Telling talented people they can't be promoted because of their race or gender. That's what your quotas did. Quotas were about creating opportunities, not limiting them. Affirmative action doesn't take opportunities away from qualified candidates. It levels a playing field that's been tilted for centuries. Bullshit! David's voice is getting loud again. Complete bullshit. When you have a quota that says 50% of promotions must go to women, and women make up 30% of qualified candidates, you're mathematically requiring discrimination. He's oversimplifying a complex issue. You're assuming the current pool of qualified candidates isn't already the result of systemic barriers. I'm assuming, David interrupts, his face reddening again, that when I need someone to debug critical software at 2 a.m., I want the person who's best at debugging software, not the person who checks the right demographic boxes. Technical skill isn't the only qualification that matters. Diversity of thought processes improves problem solving. Different backgrounds bring different approaches. Show me, John challenges. Show me one concrete example from your 2 years here where demographic diversity directly solved a technical problem that homogeneous talent couldn't handle. The examples exist, but they're not understanding the broader context. It's not about individual instances. It's about creating an environment where innovation can flourish through varied perspectives. Robert walks into the conference room unexpectedly. Sorry I'm late. How's our reunion going? His tone is dripping with sarcasm. Catherine was just explaining why we need to bring back DEI despite our record performance, David says, with obvious irritation. Robert takes a seat and looks directly at me. Catherine, can I ask you something honestly? Do you genuinely believe our success over the past 9 months is just coincidence? Their success is real, but they're attributing it to the wrong factors. I think you're benefiting from market conditions and timing, and you're incorrectly attributing causation to eliminating diversity initiatives. Okay, Robert nods slowly. Let me share some numbers with you. Our legal costs related to HR issues have dropped by 67%. Complaints about workplace discrimination, down 78%. Employee grievances filed with HR, down 85%. Those numbers could mean people feel less safe reporting issues. Reduced complaints don't necessarily mean reduced problems. They could indicate that people feel less supported in speaking up. John leans forward. Or they could indicate fewer actual problems. When everyone is treated equally based on performance, there's less reason to complain. Equal treatment ignores unequal starting points. You're treating equality and equity like they're the same thing. Equal treatment of unequal situations perpetuates inequality. David slams his hand on the table again. Enough! Catherine, listen to yourself. You're sitting here looking at concrete evidence that everything improved after we eliminated your programs, and you're still insisting we're wrong. Data requires interpretation within proper context. I'm insisting that you're drawing the wrong conclusions from limited data points. Limited? Robert's voice rises. 9 months of consistently improved performance across every metric we track isn't limited data. 9 months is still short-term in the context of cultural change. Sustainable culture change takes years to properly evaluate. You're celebrating short-term gains while ignoring long-term risks. John stands up now too. You know what, Catherine? I think I understand the fundamental disconnect here. You believe that good intentions matter more than good results. We believe results matter more than intentions. Results without considering equity implications aren't truly good results. I believe that results achieved through exclusion and bias aren't sustainable or ethical. Exclusion? David's voice is incredulous. We're including everyone who can do the job well. That's the opposite of exclusion. They don't understand how systemic barriers create the appearance of merit-based selection. You're including everyone who had the privilege and opportunity to develop those skills. That's very different from true inclusion. Robert checks his phone. Catherine, I need to be honest with you. This conversation is exactly why we made the right decision. You're completely unable to acknowledge reality when it contradicts your worldview. My worldview is based on decades of research and evidence. My perspective is based on understanding complex systems and long-term consequences that aren't immediately visible in quarterly reports. Your perspective, John says coldly, nearly bankrupted our company. Your initiatives created division, resentment, and inefficiency. Every problem we solved by eliminating DEI proves it was the right call. They solved the wrong problems and ignored the real issues. You solved surface-level complaints from people who were uncomfortable having their advantages questioned. You didn't solve systemic inequality. David walks toward the door. We solved our business problems. That's what we're paid to do. Social engineering isn't in our job description. Business success and social responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. Companies have obligations beyond profit maximization. You have a responsibility to your employees and your community. Our responsibility, John says, following David toward the door, is to provide excellent products and services while treating all employees fairly. We're doing both better than ever. Their definition of fairly ignores structural inequalities. Fair treatment requires acknowledging that different groups face different challenges and barriers. Robert is the last one standing by the table. Catherine, do you want to know the most telling statistic from this past year? Prepare for another cherry-picked data point. Our employee referral rate is up 156%. People are so happy working here now that they're actively recommending it to their friends and colleagues. That's real satisfaction, not survey responses. Referral networks tend to be homogeneous, which would reinforce existing patterns. Referral hiring typically reproduces existing demographics. High referral rates could actually indicate decreased diversity. Robert stares at me for a long moment. Do you hear yourself? You just argued that employees being so happy they recommend their workplace to friends is somehow a bad thing. I'm pointing out the implications for representation. I'm noting that referral-based hiring can inadvertently exclude underrepresented groups who may not have the same networks. Jesus Christ, Catherine. Robert shakes his head and walks toward the door. You literally cannot acknowledge any positive development. Everything has to fit your narrative of oppression and discrimination. Systemic issues don't disappear just because surface metrics improve. I'm maintaining awareness of structural factors that affect long-term equity outcomes. John pauses at the door. You know what? Come back in 5 years when we're still thriving, and maybe then you'll admit you were wrong. 5 years isn't long enough to see the full consequences of abandoning equity initiatives. 5 years might show you the cultural and reputational costs of ignoring these issues. They all leave me sitting alone in the conference room. Drive home feeling completely vindicated. They proved exactly what I expected. They can't handle having their assumptions challenged. Their short-term gains are built on a foundation of exclusion and bias. Eventually, reality will catch up with them. Spend the evening researching companies that are still committed to meaningful DEI work. There are organizations out there that understand the value of what I bring. Fast forward 1 year. My former company announced another record year. They've opened offices in 3 new cities. Their employee headcount has doubled. Stock price has tripled since I left. This is absolutely infuriating, but not surprising. Get coffee with Jessica to get the inside perspective. Catherine, I have to be honest with you, she says carefully. Morale is really high right now. People feel like they can focus on their work without worrying about saying the wrong thing. Of course, they feel comfortable when they never have to examine their biases. That's exactly the problem, Jessica. Comfort isn't growth. Comfort is stagnation. But productivity is way up. We're launching products faster, with fewer bugs, and customers love them. Short-term productivity isn't worth sacrificing equity and inclusion. What about representation and leadership? What about pay equity? What about creating opportunities for advancement? Jessica looks uncomfortable. They promoted based on performance last quarter. I think it was mostly merit-based. Mostly male and white, you mean? I honestly don't know. They don't track those numbers anymore. deliberately choosing ignorance about representation. Of course they don't track them. If you don't measure it, you can pretend it doesn't matter. Jessica shifts in her seat. Catherine, can I ask you something? Do you think there's any possibility that things really are working better now? The question is so naive it's almost painful. Better for whom, Jessica? Better for people who already had advantages? Better for people who never had to worry about discrimination? Better for the company overall? Better for customers? Better for most employees? Most employees who fit a certain demographic profile. When you say most employees, you're talking about the ones who never needed advocacy in the first place. Jessica looks down at her coffee. I guess I just wonder if there might be different ways to promote fairness without, quotas and mandatory training. She's been completely brainwashed by their rhetoric. Jessica, fairness doesn't happen naturally. It requires intentional effort and systematic change. But what if the systematic change created more problems than it solved? Cannot believe she's buying into their narrative. Any change worth making creates temporary discomfort. That's how progress works. We finish coffee, and I drive home more determined than ever. Their success is temporary and built on a false foundation. Eventually, they'll face consequences for abandoning their commitment to equity. Probably will never admit I was right, but I was right. Continue job searching with renewed focus on organizations that share my values. Find position at consulting firm that specializes in DEI implementation. Finally, somewhere that understands the importance of this work. Start new role 3 months later. Spend first day reviewing client portfolios. See my former company listed as a potential prospect. They eliminated their DEI department last year, but might be ready to reconsider given their rapid growth. Perfect opportunity to prove my point. Volunteer to lead the outreach effort. Craft carefully worded email to John about sustainable growth strategies. Surprisingly, he responds within hours. Thanks for reaching out. We're doing great without external DEI consulting, but I appreciate you thinking of us. Follow up a week later with data about risks of rapid growth without diversity focus. No response. Try calling David directly. His assistant says he's not available for DEI-related discussions. Forward research articles about correlation between diversity and innovation to Robert. His automated reply says he's not accepting unsolicited consulting materials. They're so entrenched in their success that they can't see the long-term risks. Fast forward 6 months. Company announces acquisition of 2 smaller firms. Their expansion into international markets is exceeding projections. Employee satisfaction scores remain at all-time highs. This is maddening, but still proves nothing about sustainability. Get invited to industry conference where John is keynoting. Decide to attend to hear his perspective firsthand. His presentation is about authentic performance culture and merit-based growth. Gets standing ovation from audience of mostly male executives. Approach him afterward during networking session. John, interesting presentation. I'd love to discuss how you're addressing equity within your performance culture. He turns around and his face immediately shifts. Catherine, I should have known you'd be here. Stay professional despite his obvious hostility. I'm working in DEI consulting now. Just curious about your long-term strategies for inclusive growth. Our long-term strategy is the same as our short-term strategy. Hire the best people, promote the best performers, and deliver excellent results for our customers. Same simplistic approach that ignores systemic factors. And how do you ensure best people isn't unconsciously biased towards certain demographics? John sighs heavily. Catherine, we've been through this. Our results speak for themselves. Every metric that matters has improved dramatically since we eliminated DEI. What about metrics you're not measuring? Representation, pay equity, cultural inclusion. We measure performance, productivity, customer satisfaction, and profit. Those are the metrics that actually matter for business success. Business success without social responsibility is hollow. Don't you think companies have broader obligations to society? John looks around the networking reception. Our obligation to society is providing excellent products and good jobs. We're doing both better than ever. Good jobs for whom? If your workforce doesn't reflect the diversity of your customer base. Our customer base loves our products, John interrupts. Our Net Promoter Score is the highest in our industry. Our customers don't care about our workforce demographics. Customers aren't the only stakeholders that matter. What about potential employees from underrepresented groups? What message does your hiring send about who's welcome? The message it sends is that anyone who can excel in the role is welcome. That's exactly the message we want to send. Anyone who's had the opportunity to develop those skills, he means. But what about people who had fewer opportunities to develop traditional qualifications due to systemic barriers? John checks his watch. Catherine, I have another session to attend, but let me ask you something. Do you genuinely believe we should prioritize social engineering over business performance? They're not mutually exclusive. I believe sustainable business performance requires attention to equity and inclusion. Our performance has been sustainable for 18 months and counting. At what point do you admit your assumptions might be wrong? 18 months is still short term. Ask me again in 5 years when the consequences of ignoring these issues become apparent. John starts walking away. 5 years from now, we'll still be thriving, and you'll still be insisting we're doing everything wrong. Watch him rejoin a group of other executives, probably sharing stories about how much better things got after they eliminated woke policies. Attend the rest of the conference but feel completely isolated. Most presentations focus on performance metrics without any mention of equity. The few diversity-focused sessions are poorly attended. Industry seems to be moving away from prioritizing inclusion. Drive home feeling more determined than ever to continue this important work. Their success doesn't invalidate the principles of diversity and inclusion. It just proves how entrenched systemic advantages really are. Spend evening writing blog posts about the dangers of abandoning DEI during economic upturns. Receive mostly negative comments from people celebrating merit-based success stories. Delete the most hostile responses, but leave the others to show the resistance we're facing. Fast forward another year. My former company is now considered a case study in successful business transformation. They're regularly cited as an example of streamlined operations and performance-focused culture. John has been invited to speak at multiple business schools. Several companies have explicitly eliminated their DEI departments, citing similar results. This trend is deeply troubling but not surprising. Society often regresses before making real progress. Get unexpected email from Tyler, the engineer who left during my tenure. Hi, Catherine. Hope you're doing well. Wanted to thank you for pushing the company toward change, even if it didn't work out the way you planned. Your initiatives made me think more about privilege and bias, even though I initially resisted. Just thought you should know your work had impact, even when it seemed like people weren't listening. Finally, someone who understands the long-term value of consciousness raising. Spend the next hour crafting a thoughtful response about how meaningful his message is, about how this is exactly the kind of transformation we're working toward, about how his growth proves the importance of DEI work. Hit send, feeling validated. Check my email an hour later. New message from Tyler. Well, sorry, that was a joke. I don't actually think any of that. Was seeing if you'd fall for it. Your DEI stuff was trash, and I'm glad the company ditched it. You made everyone miserable. Just wanted to see if you were still as delusional as ever. Clearly you are. Stare at the screen in complete shock. The cruelty is breathtaking. This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that DEI initiatives are meant to address. People like Tyler will never understand the harm they cause. Delete his message and block his email. Their resistance doesn't make the work less important. If anything, it proves how necessary it is. Continue consulting work with organizations that are committed to meaningful change. Help implement bias training, inclusive hiring practices, and equitable promotion systems. Some clients see immediate improvements in employee satisfaction and retention. Others struggle with resistance but stick with the process. Real change takes time and persistence. Former company continues their success trajectory, but I know that sustainable, ethical growth requires attention to equity. Their model might work in the short term, but it's not scalable or responsible. Eventually, they'll face consequences for ignoring these critical issues. Might take years, but systems built on exclusion ultimately fail. Continue advocating for inclusive practices despite industry trends. This work is too important to abandon just because it's temporarily unpopular. History will vindicate the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, even when current metrics suggest otherwise.